Have you ever had one of those moments where you just look around and think, why is my hard work yielding absolutely zero results?
Oh, yeah, completely.
Right. Like you are just completely surrounded by struggle. Or maybe, the people you trusted most in the world have suddenly just walked away.
It is the worst feeling.
It really is. Well, today's deep dive explores an ancient 3,000-year-old framework for navigating that exact space. We are looking at a masterclass in what to do when you are at absolute rock bottom and honestly just want to drop everything before the battle even begins.
It's such a universally recognizable state of mind, you know? I mean, the profound sense of hitting a wall where your energy just totally evaporates.
Yeah, you just feel completely empty.
Exactly. And the source we are pulling from today offers a genuinely transformative analysis. It's titled, When the Whole World Leaves You, Then What? Sri Krishna's Life-Changing Lessons.
Such a great title.
It is. And it examines one of the most famous philosophical texts in human history, the Bhagavad Gita. But, and this is key, it strips away the mythology to get straight at the psychological and practical tools.
Right, the real-world application.
Yeah. We are treating the central story of a warrior named Arjuna as a highly specific blueprint for modern despair.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the opening question we really need to ask ourselves, and I want you, the listener, to hold on to this as we go, is how often do we define our entire lives by the people who left us, or the specific things that went wrong, rather than the path that is still right there in front of us?
That is the core friction of the entire text. But before we can even begin to outline the solutions for that kind of paralysis, the source material forces us to first examine the anatomy of a breakdown.
Right, we have to look at the crash itself.
Precisely. Because understanding Arjuna's specific crisis is what validates our own moments of total failure. It proves that the breakdown itself is a feature of the human condition, not a glitch.
I love that. So the text actually validates the panic. But setting the scene here is important, right?
Yeah.
Because this isn't just someone feeling a little burnt out at their desk.
Not at all. I mean, we are placed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the scale is epic. You have to imagine millions of warriors gathered.
Millions. Wow.
Yeah, literally millions. The conch shells are blowing, the drums are beating, signaling that the most massive war of their era is about to begin. The physical and psychological tension is at its absolute peak.
So the stakes literally could not be higher.
They couldn't. But Arjuna, who is the undisputed greatest archer in the world, I mean, the absolute master of his craft, he looks across this field, and he doesn't just see a faceless army waiting to be fought.
He sees people he knows, right?
He sees his own family, he sees his revered teachers, his mentors, his loved ones, and in that precise moment of recognition, he completely breaks.
Again, the text says his hands literally start shaking.
His hands shake, his skin burns, his legendary bow slips entirely from his grip and falls to the ground.
It just drops.
Drops right in the dirt. He turns to his charioteer, Sri Krishna, and declares that he simply cannot fight. He is entirely paralyzed by the sheer weight of what is being asked of him.
It's essentially a massive, catastrophic panic attack on the biggest stage imaginable.
That's exactly what it is.
Think about how directly that maps to modern high-stakes environments. I mean, imagine a top-tier surgeon, someone who has trained for 20 years and performed thousands of procedures, just completely freezing right before a critical operation.
Or a seasoned CEO walking up to the podium for a make-or-break shareholder meeting and suddenly being unable to speak.
Yes. It is incredibly comforting that this ancient text validates that extreme level of panic. It tells you that breaking down doesn't mean you aren't still a master of your craft.
That distinction is paramount. The text makes a profound point here, which is that feeling sorrow or feeling an overwhelming weight that buckles your knees is not a weakness, it is human.
Even the best of the best break.
Even the strongest, most highly trained people break under certain pressures. The real defeat isn't the feeling of sadness or panic. The true defeat is abandoning your duty, your underlying purpose, because of that sorrow.
So feeling the grief is fine.
Arjuna is entirely allowed to feel the grief of the situation. His critical mistake was letting that grief convince him to drop his bow.
Okay, wait, there's a detail in the source that really struck me here. When Arjuna is having this literal breakdown, dropping his weapon, hypoventilating, Krishna smiles at him.
He does, yeah.
His charioteer, his closest friend, just smiles. That's almost jarring. I mean, why would you smile at someone in the middle of a panic attack?
It does seem really jarring at first, but it is one of the most crucial psychological moments in the text.
Really? How so?
It's a compassionate smile. It's the smile of someone who suddenly sees the exact mechanism of the trap you are caught in. Krishna instantly diagnoses the root of human anxiety. He tells Arjuna, "You are mourning for what is not proper to mourn."
So diagnosing that trigger is the first step to getting him to pick the bow back up. Because validating the panic isn't the same as solving it.
Precisely. Krishna smiles because Arjuna's paralysis stems from a deeply predictable human flaw.
Which is?
Pouring all your emotional energy into worrying about variables that are fundamentally outside of your control.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we all do that.
We do. And the source applies this directly to how we function today. We worry obsessively about macroeconomic futures. We get deeply hurt by the unpredictable behavior of other people.
We let a temporary failure calcify into our permanent identity.
Exactly. To aggressively combat this, the text establishes a very strict, uncompromising rule of control.
Okay, let's break down this rule. Because there are 3 things you never control and 1 thing you do.
Right. The 3 things you never control are, first, other people's behavior and perceptions.
You can influence them, but you never control them.
Right. Second, the changing of time, meaning the inevitable macroscopic shifts. Aging, the ending of phases in your life.
Okay, and the third?
The third is the immediate results of your actions. You do not control the fruit of your labor. You only control the labor itself.
So if I don't control the market, the passage of time, or how other people behave, by process of elimination, the only variable left is me, my own immediate effort.
Your karma, your action, the pure, unadulterated effort you put into the work in front of you, that is the only thing you own.
Okay, I have to push back on this quite a bit because it sounds beautiful on paper.
I figured you might.
I mean, it is very easy in a philosophical vacuum to say just focus on the action detached from the fruit. But practically speaking, how in the world do we ignore the results when our modern society, our bosses, our peers, the stock market judges us almost exclusively on those immediate results?
It's tough, yeah.
If I don't hit my quarterly targets, I lose my job. My mortgage doesn't care about my pure karma. How does this ancient advice actually survive in a hyper-capitalist environment?
It's the most common and fair challenge to this philosophy. But you have to look closer at the mechanism of what the text is actually saying.
Okay, what is it saying?
It is not saying that results don't exist in the physical world, or that missing a target doesn't have material consequences. It's making a point about cognitive load in human performance.
What do you mean by cognitive load in this context?
Think about the actual processing power of your brain. If you are sitting at your desk and 50% of your mental bandwidth is obsessing over whether or not your boss is going to like this report,
or whether hitting this target will save your job.
right, you only have 50% of your cognitive capacity left to actually write the report. Worrying about the fruit actively diminishes the quality of the action. You are draining your working memory on a variable, the future result that you cannot touch.
So by obsessing over the result, you are virtually guaranteeing a worse result because you are starving your own effort of the focus it needs.
Exactly. The Bhagavad Gita is offering a performance hack as much as a spiritual truth.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
And furthermore, tying your internal stability to those external results is a recipe for psychological destruction. No matter how perfectly you execute your work, a sudden market crash, a change in upper management, or a global pandemic can obliterate the result.
And if your entire identity is tangled up in that result, you break when the result fails.
You drop your bow. But if your identity is firmly anchored in the integrity of your action, your karma, then a failed result is stripped of its emotional weight. It just becomes data.
It's feedback, not a failure. It's no longer a devastating personal indictment. You just adjust your aim and keep firing.
Yes. You protect your core by severing it from the unpredictable variables of the outside world.
I hear that, but man, detaching your identity from a massive market crash that wipes out your savings or a business you built for 10 years going under, that is a heavy lift.
This is an incredible heavy lift.
That requires so much mental discipline because when those external losses hit, the pain is incredibly real.
It is agonizing. And the philosophy doesn't pretend otherwise, which is why it provides a metaphysical framework to help you reconstruct your identity when those devastating external losses happen.
Right, to help you bounce back.
The text introduces a concept about the soul, arguing that the core of who you are is never born and never dies. And the analogy it uses is incredibly practical. It compares the loss of these external things to changing clothes.
The wardrobe of the soul.
Right. The idea is that just as we discard old, worn-out clothes to put on new ones, The soul naturally sheds old bodies, old phases, to take on new ones.
And as source material makes it clear, this isn't strictly a literal lesson about physical reincarnation or the afterlife. It's a mechanism for dealing with everyday catastrophic loss.
Absolutely. The application is about how you view what has left you, whether it was a person you loved deeply who walked away, a dream job that evaporated, or a community that rejected you. The text explicitly warns, do not end yourself over a lost garment.
It's just old clothing.
Exactly. Those things were just the temporary clothing your life was wearing at the time. They are not the entirety of your existence.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I was thinking about this, and it's like being completely devastated when a single chapter of a book ends.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, when you finish a chapter, even a really great one, you don't throw the book in the trash. You turn the page. The lost opportunity was just the old clothing or the old chapter of your career or your relationship.
That is a phenomenal way to understand it. The chapter ends, but the overarching narrative of who you are remains untouched. You don't throw the book away just because the scene changed. You read the next page because the core essence, your look, is still there, ready to operate in the next environment.
Okay, so if losing these external things, shedding the old clothes or turning the page, isn't what actually destroys us in the long run, what does? Because we both know people who have been permanently broken by a betrayal or a massive failure.
We all do, yeah.
If the external event isn't the lethal blow, what is?
This is where the philosophy takes a very sharp, very challenging turn inward. The text argues that the real threat, the only thing that can permanently destroy you, is entirely internal.
It's an inside job.
It really is. It is the biological and psychological cascade of your own reaction to those external events.
The battlefield is actually inside your own head.
Yes. The text presents a terrifyingly absolute duality. It says you are your own best friend or your own worst enemy.
No middle ground.
There is zero middle ground. A controlled mind brings the whole world to your aid. An uncontrolled mind leaves you beyond help. Even if every single person around you is desperately trying to save you, an uncontrolled mind will find a way to sabotage it.
And the source specifically points to the comparison trap here, which feels completely tailor-made for today's culture.
It brings up social media directly.
Of course it does.
We look at others' success, the filtered, highly edited versions of their lives, and we immediately generate a sense of failure within ourselves. Krishna's message is that your path is yours alone. You are a unique entity, not a replica.
So,
comparing your chaotic, behind-the-scenes struggles to someone else's highlight reel is the primary function of an uncontrolled mind. It is a self-inflicted wound that starts the destruction process.
here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because what happens when that specific self-inflicted wound gets infected? The source material details a very rigid, step-by-step, psychological chain reaction that happens when we get insulted or betrayed, right?
It does.
This part fascinated me because it reads like modern neuroscience.
It really does read like that. It outlines a psychological domino effect that begins the moment you allow an external insult to penetrate your internal fortress.
Walk us through the dominoes.
Krishna says, when you are insulted or things go wrong, do not break into anger, because anger breeds delusion. Delusion then confuses your memory, and a confused memory destroys your intellect, your ability to reason.
And once that's gone,
Once your intellect is destroyed, you perish.
let's actually dig into the mechanism of that, because here's where it gets incredibly practical. Think about how perfectly this ancient chain reaction maps onto a modern doom scroll or getting sucked into a heated, toxic argument on the internet.
Oh, it's the exact same mechanism.
Someone posts a small insult directed at you. That tiny spark triggers anger.
And let's look at what that anger is biologically. Your amygdala is hijacked. Your body pumps out cortisol and adrenaline. You are immediately thrown into a fight-or-flight state.
Which is the delusion.
That is the beginning of the delusion the text talks about, yes.
Right, because in that fight-or-flight state, you experience severe tunnel vision. Your perception is literally narrowed. You are deluded into thinking that winning this trivial online argument is a matter of absolute life and death.
And because you are in that deluded state, it leads to the next domino-confused memory.
Exactly. When your brain's threat response is dominating, it effectively shuts down your rational prefrontal cortex. You lose access to the broader context of your life.
You forget your own long-term goals.
You forget your own core values. You literally forget who you really are, that you are a professional or a patient parent or someone who doesn't care about the opinions of strangers.
And because that memory of your true identity is temporarily wiped out, your intellect crumbles. You have no rational guardrails left.
So you make a terrible career-ending decision. You type an email you can never take back. You burn a bridge that took a decade to build.
You completely sabotage your own life.
And the tragedy is, it wasn't the external insult that ruined you. It was your own unchecked anger that hijacked your biological operating system and drove you off the cliff.
That is the exact mechanism Krishna is warning Arjuna about. The anger hands over the controls of your mind to fear and outrage. The text is urging you, the listener, to realize that your biggest enemy is never the person insulting you.
It's yourself.
Your biggest enemy is always your own fear, your own unchecked anger, and your own hopelessness.
This brings us to a really difficult crossroads, I think. Because if this internal battle requires so much relentless vigilance, and our intellect is constantly being assaulted by both external losses and these terrifying internal chain reactions,
Right.
why on earth must we face these excruciating struggles at all? Why couldn't the design of life just be slightly more forgiving?
That is the existential question at the heart of the Bhagavad Gita, and this is where the source provides its ultimate perspective-shifting comfort.
What's the comfort?
The text explains that the overarching structure of life, whether you view that as God, the universe, or just the nature of reality, does not test you in order to break you. It doesn't drop obstacles in your path just to watch you suffer.
Then what is the mechanical purpose of hitting rock bottom?
The tests exist specifically to stretch your capacity, to elevate you to a tier of resilience you could never have reached otherwise.
So it's about growth.
Let's look back at Arjuna on the battlefield. He wept. He had a full physical breakdown. He begged to quit, but he didn't actually run away. He stayed on the chariot in the middle of the terror. He absorbed these immense philosophical teachings. He rewired his mindset, and he became the ultimate victor of the war.
The rock bottom wasn't an execution sentence.
No, it was the necessary agonizing friction required to forge his ultimate victory.
To survive that friction and actually achieve that elevation, the source says we need to equip ourselves with 3 highly specific pillars. Let's make sure we really untack these.
Yes, they are Dharma, Karma, and Dharya.
Let's start with Dharma. It often gets translated simply as duty, but it's deeper than that, isn't it?
Much deeper. Dharma is about the highest alignment of your inherent skills, your responsibilities, and your truth.
So it's highly personal.
It is the inescapable path that belongs uniquely to you. It's not just a job description. It's the moral and practical obligation you have to your own potential.
And then karma, which we touched on earlier.
Right. Karma is the raw action. It is doing the grueling work required by your dharma, but doing it with that complete detachment from the immediate fruit. It is the pure execution of the task.
Which leaves the 3rd pillar, Dharya, patience.
Yes.
The source has this beautiful phrase attached to it, noting that there may be delay, but never total darkness. I want to linger on how patience practically interacts with action.
It's a crucial interaction.
Because in a culture obsessed with speed, being patient often feels indistinguishable from doing nothing. How does holding on to patience, Dharya, actually protect our daily actions from slowly rotting into bitter frustration?
It is the ultimate protective layer for your mind. Action without patience inevitably turns into anxiety.
Well, that's good.
Think of it structurally. If you are constantly digging up the soil every single morning to check if the seed you planted yesterday has sprouted, you are actively destroying the root system.
You will kill the very thing you are trying to grow.
Because your impatience becomes interference.
Exactly. Impatience is interference.
Patience is what gives your action the oxygen and the space it needs to compound over time. Patience is the radical trust that the universe operates on its own complex timeline, not on your preferred schedule.
And that ties back into the brain, right?
Neurochemically, yes. Patience is what prevents that catastrophic anger chain reaction we broke down a moment ago. When you have cultivated Dharya, a delay doesn't trigger your amygdala. It doesn't spark anger. It simply sparks endurance. Your prefrontal cortex stays engaged. You stay rational.
So let's bring all of this immense philosophy together. We started with that crushing feeling of hitting absolute rock bottom. When the people you rely on leave you, when your intense hard work seems completely pointless and you just want to drop your bow and surrender.
Right.
What this ancient deep dive tells us is that in that agonizing moment, you don't panic. You look at the massive battlefield in front of you. You fully acknowledge the very real sorrow you feel, but you refuse to let it sever you from your purpose.
You remember the strict rule of control. You aggressively detach your identity from the unpredictable results, from the changing times, and from the shifting opinions of others. You pour 100% of your cognitive load into the only thing you own, your pure, immediate effort.
And when the catastrophic external losses do happen, you remember the wardrobe of the soul.
Or the book chapters.
Exactly. You remind yourself that a lost job, a failed project, or a broken relationship is just an old chapter. It is an old garment being shed. It is not the destruction of your entire story. You turn the page, and you keep going.
And above all, you guard your internal landscape. You maintain your mind as your greatest ally, so you don't fall into the biochemical trap of anger, delusion, and self-destruction. You trust that the friction of the test is exactly what is required to elevate you.
It is a total ground-up paradigm shift for how we process hardship. As we wrap up this deep dive, I know you always manage to distill these massive concepts into something we can carry with us. What is the final provocative thought you want the listener to mull over today?
Well, we spent this time analyzing how the mind can be our greatest enemy and how these brutal external struggles are fundamentally designed to elevate us. I want you to reconsider the very nature of your current struggle.
Reconsider it how?
Think about the specific thing that is exhausting you right now. If the hardest battles are entirely internal, and we are indeed our own biggest enemies, what if the very things you are fighting against, your deep-seated fear, your current heartbreak, your simmering anger, are not actually barriers in your way?
Wait, really?
What if they are the exact custom-designed weights you need to lift in order to build